Welcome to the Trance Movement podcast, where we will be exploring altered states of consciousness through somatic healing practices, embodied spirituality, and what all of that means for your personal path and life. Hi there, my name is Arnoud. In this episode, I want to provide you with some ideas about a very simple but powerful tool for transformation: your breath. Breath awareness is one of these rare things, and this can only be said about a few, that will, once you start practicing it, affect you and your life on all levels, because your breath is deeply intertwined with all kinds of aspects of your being and your becoming. Your breath is a mirror reflecting your inner landscape, and it's a tool for profound change, to regulate, to heal, and to awaken. With your breath, you hold the potential to liberate yourself from all kinds of patterns of tension and trauma that have shaped your life, and it will offer you a gateway to reclaim your vitality and your agency. All right, so then let's dive into the both simplicity and the infinite possibilities that your breath holds. What inspires us? Breath is primal. Breath is of the essence, not just as a physiological necessity to sustain you and to keep you alive, but it's a sacred gateway to heightened consciousness and profound transformation. This sacred relationship between breath and spirit seems to be a timeless and a universal truth. We see this across many cultures, areas in the world, and even time zones, that the breath has always been seen as in some way the very essence of life itself, the animating force that gives rise to consciousness and vitality. And so, whatever your personal take is on things, to whatever specific system, ideology, or tradition you subscribe, whether that be Vedic scriptures and practices or Greek philosophy, the fact that most all of these seem to acknowledge the breath as being really primal and essential points to something really important. But for now, let's just leave all these ancient systems and philosophies behind us and bring all of this a little closer to home. And let's look at our language, first of all, because the words and the phrases and the expressions that we use on a daily basis reveal something important about our breath and about who we are. The word inspiration, for example, means both to breathe in, but also to imbue something with life or purpose or vitality. Within the word inspiration, we find this word spirit, and together with similar words like ghost or soul, they seem to have this same etymological root, the same original meaning, all referring to the original Latin root spirare, meaning to breathe. And so once you start seeing this, you can't stop noticing that concepts like soul and spirit are very intertwined with things like breath and breathing. We can say things like, something took my breath away, or I need to catch my breath. Maybe breath and spirit are, in essence, the same thing. And so maybe it's time to start paying attention to this companion that's always been there with you along the way. let's clear up a few things. Lately, in the last few years, there's a growing interest in breathwork and breathwork techniques. So let me emphasize that there are, you could say, two aspects of breathwork. There is breath awareness and there's conscious breathing. And those are not the same thing. Conscious breathing, or what you could call breathwork or breathwork techniques, usually involve some technique of purposefully inhaling and exhaling in a particular way. With breath awareness, you don't do anything particular. You're not deliberately breathing, but you could say the breath is breathing you. You are just present with it, a witness, becoming aware of it, feeling the sensations, observing it, without trying to do anything particular. And this is very worthwhile to do, because this way your breath becomes like a mirror, reflecting back to you what's happening deeper inside. You know, not everybody breathes the same way. Actually, when babies are born, wherever they are born in the world, usually they breathe quite similarly, naturally. But as soon as people start to grow up, they are shaped, and therefore their breath is shaped by all kinds of external influences and personal life experiences. We will get into that, and we will start looking at not just how unresolved trauma and tensions have shaped your breathing, have affected your natural breathing, but also, and this is actually the perspective that I want to offer you, how you are already using all kinds of breathwork techniques quite naturally. In your life, you have already been using all kinds of techniques that your body inherently offers you to regulate yourself. But usually this was on an unconscious or subconscious level. So when it comes to processes of personal transformation and awareness, the breath is this amazing tool, this beautiful mirror that helps us on our way. Because there's plenty of workshops and online courses out there where you can learn all kinds of amazing breathwork techniques. And these are amazing. There are many, many breathwork techniques. But let's start first with creating, cultivating some breath awareness. By bringing your breath to your awareness, of course, quite naturally, things will also start to flow, start to move, start to change. But quite naturally, because you are becoming more aware of your breath, and slowly, step by step, will start becoming a conscious agent, starting to work with your breath purposefully, not through elaborate breathwork techniques, but easy, naturally, in flow. And you can even do it at any moment with anything that you're doing. For example, listening to the sound of my voice and simultaneously, consciously breathing. One of the amazing qualities, one of the special things about breathing is that you can breathe both unconsciously and consciously. Of course, most of the time we just breathe completely unconscious, but you can bring your breath at any moment to your awareness and do it consciously. So this is a very special and unique quality about breathing, because it lies on this threshold, on the synapse between the unconscious or the subconscious and the conscious layers of your being. So this makes breath and breathing a key, a tool, you could say a bridge between the conscious and the unconscious parts of you and your life. Your breath is connected to all kinds of aspects of who you are. Remember, your emotions, the flow of the energy through your system, the way that you hold tensions. In all kinds of ways, your breath is deeply connected. And so simply bringing your breath to your consciousness, to your awareness, will therefore also bring all kinds of aspects of you and things that are happening inside of you to your awareness, to the level, to the surface of consciousness. And there are so many amazing things to discover once you start exploring this landscape. There's a whole multi-dimensional, interconnected, deep ocean of different sensations and experiences and things that can come to surface and start to unfold once you simply start becoming a conscious breather. In a way, your body is your subconscious, and your breath truly reflects that. Being this amazing mirror that shows you all the time what's really happening deeper inside. So let's shed some light in the darkness and take a look at what's really happening. Let's shed a little light on where you might be possibly blocked or inhibited and how all of that came about. Because, let's get real, we've all been damaged, right? In some ways, smaller or bigger ways, depending on, your personal life experience. We've all had to go through things in life that might have been overwhelming or scary or painful, and that have had possibly a lasting effect on you that can really show, but also can be really transformed through conscious breathing. And let's break it down step by step from the psychophysiological to the somatic level, and then also perhaps from a more energetic, spiritual, you could say, perspective. When a child, or this goes for any adult person too, is faced with some kind of a threatening or maybe an emotionally overwhelming situation, the autonomic nervous system responds, to ensure your survival in that moment. So first of all, there's sympathetic activation, what we call the fight or flight mode. This is very well known and very understandable, right? When you're in a threatening situation, then you refer to first fight or flight mode. In this case, your breath becomes shallow, high in your chest, fast and erratic, and is preparing your body to act. At the same time, there's also possibly, when fighting and fleeing is not possible, when there's no way to fight or run yourself out of the situation, the parasympathetic nervous system shuts down. And this is often the case, of course, for a child, because a child usually is not able to escape the threatening situation. So this parasympathetic shutdown means that the breath collapses, it becomes held, suspended, nearly invisible, and there may be long pauses, or it moves into a faint, barely perceptible rhythm. So this freeze response is actually kind of the body and the psyche saying, I can't escape. And we know this freeze very well from nature, where we see animals who are, for example, chased by a predator, might refer to a freeze, which can be in nature sometimes an effective strategy to escape the threatening situation. Many people have heard of this freeze response, where you, as a strategy to escape something in the outside world, um, freeze, but it's also at the same time a way for the body and mind to escape a situation that's in essence inescapable. So these painful feelings that you don't want to really feel, but you can't escape them. So it's also the body and the psyche saying, I'll just numb out now. I will stop feeling altogether. And so when you do this, you will hold or restrict your breath. And it's actually kind of the body's built in anesthetic. It's a way to disconnect awareness from the sensation, right? To disconnect from the pain. If you want to look at this from a more energetic or let's say spiritual perspective, then you could say that the breath being the bridge between the conscious and the unconscious will constrict because life force will withdraw from the experience, from the part of the body where the pain is felt. So the breath constricts, sealing off the pain, and energetically, you could say that spirit leaves matter and it becomes numb. The life force, the vitality leaves the system. Now, what often happens to people, to children, is that some of these adaptive patterns become an habitual breathing imprint. So the body kind of remembers the earlier conditions, even when, the original threat or the danger is already long gone. The body still stays in this state where it still feels maybe threatened, not safe. Some people, when they are describing these processes, looking at it from a more, you could say, shamanic perspective, use terms like soul loss, where they describe how the integrity of the soul gets lost, gets fragmented through the process of encountering trauma. So the body really remembers. And even if you might not consciously, on a mental level, you might not even have a memory anymore of the particular event, but your body really does. There's a famous Dutch psychiatrist, Bessel van der Kolk, researching trauma healing, who is often quoted saying, "The body keeps the score." So at some point, even when the threat is already long gone, your breathing might still reflect and even reinforce this emotional structure. So, for example, a really tight, really strongly tight and held breath with a held diaphragm is often associated with suppressed grief or anger, but also a shallow, very high upper chest breathing is often associated with anxiety, vigilance. But there's also, for example, a barely perceptible breath, which is often associated with, states like dissociation and numbness. So, in other words, the breath will at some point also become the gatekeeper of feeling. It will modulate how much life, how much sensation, or how much truth you can safely allow in. So allow that to sink in here for a moment, the realization that your breath has been a gatekeeper for you. Your breathing patterns, your responses with your breath have kept you safe, have guarded you from all kinds of unpleasant feelings. But through that, you have also developed these habits of constricting your breath in certain situations that might, stand in the way of you really being you and of your life really unfolding as it could. And there comes a time when it's really the moment to start letting go and relieving yourself of some of this. These responses have really served their purpose, but now it's really time to move on because they're holding you back. And to let the gatekeeper know that, the threat is gone and that you can relax again. And this is where breath awareness and breath work become very, very transformative. They will bring light into frozen, hidden layers of you. And as your breath becomes more full, more embodied, these frozen fragments of experience, they will slowly begin to thaw. Sometimes you can even feel that in different ways, like trembling, heat, or waves of emotion. Through embodied breath practices, you can reconnect awareness with sensation. So, in essence, undoing the dissociation. You can regulate your nervous system, bringing safety, to feel again. And you can expand your container of consciousness, allowing previously split off experiences to reintegrate. In other words, the breath that once protected you by shutting down becomes the same breath that awakens and heals you. Let's start taking next steps into exploring how it actually is that your body unconsciously, subconsciously is regulating itself, your emotions, your energy, through breathing. For example, did you know that the average person will sigh once every 5 to 6 minutes on average? So a sigh meaning that you take approximately the double amount of air in, and then you, through sighing, let all of that go, right? It's like the sigh of relief, right? So we seem to do this, give off this sigh of relief, approximately 12 times an hour on average. So this is natural, and it's kind of nature's way of resetting the system. And so whether you are conscious of that or not, you do this quite regularly. And of course, especially in moments when there's tension, when you're overwhelmed in some way, when you feel frustrated maybe, in all kinds of smaller and bigger ways, your body has this amazing ability to reset itself, to go from a tense state quite quickly to a more relaxed state through sighing. So that's really interesting. Your body is already showing you one of these techniques that is so natural actually that you've been doing it already. And what a wonderful way to relieve yourself or to reset yourself a little bit. Just a simple sigh can already do so much. What kind of moments do you catch yourself sighing? And what does that do for you, How does that affect you? How does it feel before and after, for example? And once you start bringing a little bit awareness to all of this, you will start to notice that you are regularly sighing. And then at some point, when you're crossing the thresholds between the unconscious and the conscious, when you're building on that bridge, you will start also at some moments to do it more consciously. Another beautiful way in which your body resets itself is through yawning. And everybody knows this wonderful sensation, right, of yawning. And it's a little different than the sigh we just explored. Because in the yawn, there's a lot more parts of the body that usually engage, especially in the face. So the muscles in your jaws, your mouth, it opens really, really wide. And so you stretch a lot of muscles in your jaws, but also in your face, but also even in the chest and other areas of the body. And often it's triggered by things like boredom. Being tired can be a signal of the body that it needs some rest, but it's also a signal of the body maybe that it needs some more focus, some more energy, some more oxygen. And so through yawning, you restore or reset yourself, rebalance yourself, and prepare yourself for the next thing, for what's to come. Let's explore the yawn a little bit, because yawning, being something that often just spontaneously happens, it can be triggered, right? We've already acknowledged that this yawning can be triggered by things like being bored or being tired. But everybody knows also this experience of being triggered to yawn when you see somebody else yawning, right? Even me just talking about the topic right now might trigger some yawning responses in you. Have you been yawning so far while listening to this audio? Often we suppress it, especially in, social situations when you're together talking or busy with other people and you feel your body tends to want to yawn, that you maybe suppress it because you don't find it very socially acceptable to do so in that situation. And as always, it's the breath that offers you this tool to play, in this case with the yawn, because next to all the stretching of the jaw and the facial muscles, of course you're breathing while yawning. And so you can, for example, when you start feeling a yawn coming up, already start surfing that wave, right? By really getting into it and really with your breath work with this wonderful cascade of a reset happening. And after experimenting and playing with this kind of stuff for a little while, then you can really be creative. For example, how about combining sighing and yawning? This is a really ecstatic, amazing experience. So the moment when you feel a yawn coming up is to also really work with your breath and sigh with it and make it this kind of a cocktail, this kind of a overwhelming flow of a yawn and a sigh happening simultaneously. Imagine that, you can try that. See where it takes you, right? Play with it and see where it takes you. And I think there lies a important basis in all of this, because there's, many, many amazing breathwork techniques, and there's a whole world out there of courses and programs that you can follow where you can learn all of these techniques. But the simple act of just bringing your breath into your consciousness already touches you and starts moving things. And because your breath exists on this threshold, on the synapse of the conscious and the subconscious, you might have noticed that at the moment that you bring your breath to your awareness and start observing, that it's almost impossible to not act on it, to not get engaged with it in some way. As soon as you become aware of your breath, of this essential part of you, it starts to change. Your act of observing seems to affect it. Your awareness itself becomes an influential factor. And it's not wrong when this starts to happen. It's actually supposed to be like that. The act of observing, of being present with your breath, becomes an integral part of things moving, of things changing, of life unfolding. Alright, so this is the most important thing for now that I wanted to share with you before in future episodes, for example, we get into specific breathwork techniques and other mind-altering techniques, is to first just simply become a little bit more aware of this breathing that's already happening. Thanks for listening, and please consider to like, subscribe, to follow for future content.